Welcome to Joy on Paper Live, a program for writers and those who dream of writing, and for everyone who wants to know the story behind the book. I am Patsy with a Z, and I am turning the program over today to my guest host, Bria Burton, who will interview Lou Diamond Phillips and Yvonne Phillips.
The Tinderbox, Soldier of Indira. By Lou Diamond Phillips, with illustrations by Yvonne Phillips. And welcome to Joy on Paper Live. I am Bria Burton, a guest host. With us, Lou Diamond Phillips and Yvonne Phillips, the author and illustrator of the Tinderbox. And not only do they have book one, but book two is coming soon, this year, in fact. So we have a lot to talk about. Lou and Yvonne, welcome. Thank you so much for coming onto the show.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, by Yvonne, for the first book, but story by Yvonne and illustrations for the second book. So, to be quite honest, neither one of them would exist without her. So,
Isn't that incredible? And you're married, so there is that beautiful piece that you both get to work so closely together and do life together. I just love that. Yvonne, I wanted to start by asking you, what got you into illustrating in the first place? Is that something that you've always done? Did it get sparked in your younger years or when you were older?
I've always been interested in drawing and illustration. I grew up in Germany. So my Oma would tell me fairy tales, Geschichten. And in the morning, she'd sit me on the bench while she was getting ready for the day and hand me a piece of paper and a pencil, and I would draw pictures of the story she had told me. So Grimm's and Hans Christian Andersen were always touchstones for my drawings. And in the 90s, I really got into comic book and graphic novels, and I wanted to do a graphic novel or a comic book version of a fairy tale, maybe a bit more of an obscure one. And The Tinderbox is always one of my favorites from Hans Christian Andersen. But I never did it because I'm not a great writer, and it never happened. So I told Lou about it.
big mistake. Yeah, well, and then I saw her illustrations, and it was going to be a manga style graphic novel, and immediately, being in the film business, I mean, it said to me movie. They looked like storyboards for a film, and I said, well, let's make this movie. And she goes, okay, we'll go ahead and write it. And so I did in screenplay form. And when I finished it, I realized that it was money to let me direct and her produce. Um, and I'd also, at the time we undertook this story, Game of Thrones hadn't happened yet, but Star Wars was big and Stargate and science fiction was always, a very big deal. So that's why the Tinderbox Soldier of Indira became a science fiction, or I should say, set in space, because we prefer to call it a science fantasy.
Mhm.
It retains the fantasy elements, the fairy tale elements of Hans Christian Andersen's original story.
So yeah. So then
Oh, yes, beautifully.
he writes the book and says, will you illustrate it? Okay, I love the book. I love the story. I wasn't prepared to illustrate a sci-fi outer space thing. My version was always a dystopian, Fallout, Last of Us, a post-apocalyptic Earth fairy tale, an outer space. No. So when he was doing the movie, I was like, yeah, go ahead. I don't have to draw it. Go for it. Then he writes the book and now says, can you add a couple of illustrations? Sure, it won't be a comic book or a graphic novel, but let's add a few illustrations. And now it's a topic.
You're very welcome. Yeah, no, that to some interesting discussions because this was not her wheelhouse, but I knew that she could do it. And yes, I had a lot of guilt for forcing her to do something that was not her original conception. But she saw a wonderful interview with David Bowie once, and
I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the exact quote, but he said, "You're the most creative when your feet aren't touching the ground, or when you wade deeper into the water." I think I took that more to heart in the second book than I did in the first one. The first one, I thought, okay, I'm going to go fairy tale style, old, Grimm's fairy tale, the wood hatching line art that looks like a little bit older comic book. But this time I went, you know what? Let's go a bit. Let me go into the Game
yeah.
of Thrones fantasy world a little bit more. And if it happens to be space, it happens to
Yeah.
be, I won't draw that part.
I also want to add the touchstone for both of us in the first novel was certainly Stardust by Neil Gaiman with illustrations by Charles Vess.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And our production company is called Frabjous Day. And so Lewis Carroll is a really big muse for us. And the Tennille illustrations throughout that were also, I think, a bit of an influence on where we went with it.
Well, I just love that explanation because it's this beautiful mashup that Lou, you brought what you had, Yvonne, you brought what you had, even though it was outside your wheelhouse. You were willing to step into some discomfort as a creative, which speaks volumes of you as a person, I will say. And I personally, as a reader, an end user, if you will, reading this book and enjoying this book, your illustration just it helped the book come alive for me personally. The writing is fantastic. I loved being able to look at these different
Thank you
illustrations
so
and
much. That
what's
means a lot.
coming for the next book. As an artist, I can only imagine you see your own work and you think, oh, you see the little nitpicky things. The rest of us who are not artists are like, this is amazing. I mean, even the cover that's showing right now for the viewer, your cover of this book, I absolutely love the feel of it, the theme of it, the star-crossed lover, the Aurora constellation, which is a driving piece of this first book, is right there in the cover, and you tied it all together with the soldier. And so it's so evocative with those dark colors in the background and the light foreground. It's absolutely wonderful. So just thank you for what you brought to this book and this project. Let's just talk briefly
Thank you
about
so much for
book one before we talk a little bit about book two. How would you sum up for someone who's not read book one yet, but is going to get excited about being able to go book one, book two? What would you say is the story behind this book that people need to know about this book?
In some ways, I did not veer from the plot of Hans Christian Andersen's The Tinderbox, which is funny because it's like 5 pages long, and our book is a real book. What was fun was extrapolating an old tale and bringing it, hopefully cleverly, into a world that does not exist. And a number of touchstones for that. I mean, West Side Story is Romeo and Juliet. Grendel was a
Yes.
favorite of mine way back when, where it was, the retelling of Beowulf from Grendel's point of view. There are a number of different, in the movie world, Young Guns is Kurosawa's Magnificent Seven. So there are all these sort of mini homages, and the fun was to take this hero's journey. It's definitely an epic journey, and it also owes a lot to Romeo and Juliet because our two leads are a young man who's a soldier, or so we think, and a princess who has been basically locked up in a tower. Pretty classic stuff. And to articulate that hero's journey and a journey of self-discovery and of maturation and of an unlikely and even unwilling hero. Yvonne introduced me to The Alchemist many, many, many years ago. That also is a lovely journey that I'm sure influenced my outlook on how to turn this into something that would be relevant for a 21st century audience.
Oh, absolutely. And because I'm thinking even now of the star-crossed lover piece, which is the Aurora constellation is this prophecy in the book that very much drives a lot of the narrative, a lot of the character motivations, like the Mad King, for lack of what better term for King Xander. He is obsessed with this prophecy that a soldier might marry his princess daughter, which would cause the fall of the kingdom. And do you know what came to mind as I was revisiting in preparation for this? The star-crossed piece is two bodies in the heavenlies crossing each other, and we just had a solar
Yeah.
eclipse. Where were you during the solar eclipse?
Out in the yard.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got
With our
our glasses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you see much where you were?
It was amazing.
We were in New York, so I think we had 90%.
Yeah. It was crazy. It was
Oh,
way cool.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what does that do for you as artists, creatives, writer? What does that do for you having that experience?
Yeah, every life experience, not only as a writer, but as an actor, as a director, as an illustrator, it feeds the well. It
Mm,
keeps the well filled with inspiration, so to speak. And it's funny because that the recent eclipse is the most I've ever seen of one,
Hmm.
other than on film or news reports or whatever. So to see it in person was really just fascinating and amazing. And the metaphor that I used in the book of star-crossed lovers is
Hmm.
basically an eclipse, and how one can eclipse the other, or how they cross paths in space but perhaps never touch.
We're in a weird way
mhm.
meeting without
Exactly.
ever really
Yeah.
meeting.
And so a lot of that, as I said, there's so many Easter eggs about where I am paying respect to certain. I mean, there's even Beatles lyrics in there, but this whole creation of the world, and like Lewis Carroll and Through the Looking Glass, the dogs that were in Hans Christian Andersen's short story,
We're actually dogs.
and now there's
Right.
something very different. The tree
Yes.
is something very different. The witch is something very different, but they're all in the book.
Yes, and I love the acronyms. Again, I won't do spoilers, but the way you have it in the first book is the acronym for the dogs. The acronym, well, the tree is something slightly different than an acronym, but it has this wonderful representation that, having read your book, it took me back to say, okay, I've never actually read the original Tinderbox. And I did, I read it. And so I got a little bit of the broader picture of what inspired some of these pieces that ended up in the novel. And I love your description of science fantasy, because that is a great descriptor. It's a space opera. Of course, you mentioned Star Wars. I think about, we have Princess Leia. She's a space princess. In this
Hmm.
one, you have Princess Aurora. And so just these little wonderful Easter eggs, as you call them, that find their way into the book and just make it a rich reading because of what goes behind it. Would you say, now that you've had your first novel published and going into the second book as a writer, what was that process going from, okay, I have never written a novel and published, to I've now got a published novel out there and I'm writing the sequel? What are some things you can share about that writing process of moving into the sequel as a writer?
I'm happy to share this because I think it's very aspirational and perhaps inspirational. I support the writing community on Twitter, as does Yvonne, the artistic community. Talking to a lot of young writers, or not so young writers, who are not yet published, or they
Mhm.
self-publish. And it's important. It's for me to relate to the audience that it took 10 years to write the first book, and that's because it was an off and on process. And I didn't know if it was going to be any good, and that acting thing kept getting in the way. So
You had a
yeah,
day job, yes.
I had a day job that I had to, um, what was it? The writer of The Firm wrote his thing on the Long Island Railroad. So yeah, I didn't didn't do that, but I would let it go. I'd pick it up. I'd let it go, and then when it started gaining some steam. I have to say, my friend Craig Johnson, who gave us a blurb for the first book, he had written all the Longmire mysteries, and I was doing that series. And I showed him a couple of chapters. I said, "Am I wasting my time?" And he looked at me and said, "You got to finish this. You got to finish this." And
Mm.
so I continued to do that, and I literally continued. But eventually, I got more facile with it to where I literally would keep the computer and a legal pad on the set of Prodigal Son and continue to do rewrites. I also have to give a huge shout out to Chris Bojalian, a dear friend of ours, who we're working on another project with, who also read it and, interestingly enough, suggested that he give it to his agent, who
Mhm.
Deborah Schneider and Penelope Burns, but Deborah Schneider had actually repped my first novel that is still unpublished that I wrote in college.
Oh
And
my
so,
goodness.
yeah, it was a full circle thing. They loved this. They got it out there. Athon picked it up, and so it was a long 10-year process, and then the 3 4 revisions, even the illustration process, and then the second book. It was so well received on the Amazon charts, as you said. It was a space opera, YA, which I never set out to do, science fiction. In a number of different categories.
Yeah, young
The
adult.
Yeah, the book sold very well,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
top 3, top 5, even number 1
Yeah,
on occasion.
on yeah, in
And
certain categories for sure.
one of the ongoing comments was, "We love this world. We love these characters." So we probably should do a sequel. And without giving spoilers away about the end of the book, I thought I knew where the jumping off place was going to be. And I thought maybe we would revisit the fairy tale world and steal basically from, Grimm's or Hans again, or, just any one of them who would have the basic setup of what I thought we were going to do. About, I don't know, a year went by or whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah. And then one
and a
day,
pandemic.
and a pandemic, and so a lot of time to be creative. And then one day, Yvonne literally says to me, "What about this?" and lays the broad strokes of a plot on me, and I just went, "Wow!" Because her idea literally was pulled from between the sentences and pages of the first book. It all made so much sense, and it was nothing that I had even imagined. And then once that well once that
Thank
was
you.
there no once that was there, it took a year to write the sequel.
What a great team you make.
Yeah, well,
I
she's
just
not
love
yelling
that.
at me about drawing spaceships.
Oh, this look. I have nothing. I love sci-fi. In fact, I used to read a lot of sci-fi in the '90s. A lot of but I love the sci-fi from the '50s and the '60s. I like
Yeah.
William Gibson, Ray Bradbury, Philip K. Dick, Harlan Ellison. I like the sci-fi from before NASA existed. That's the kind of
Mm,
sci-fi I like because it's more of a psychological study
yeah,
on humanity and how the worlds happen
Mhm.
and that kind of thing.
yes,
Whereas now sci-fi is a lot more techy.
Yeah.
I'm not
yes.
into the
Hardware.
techie, the hardware, and I like the psychological stuff. That's why the dystopian and the post-apocalyptic, and that kind of stuff is always interesting.
Loved Fallout recently.
Yeah,
So good.
right.
But I will say, I mean, one of the other things, again, my writing shows a lot of different influences, but I love the influences in Yvonne's illustrations. In the first book, wait till you see what's coming up in the second. But in the first book, it is, as we said, this sort of German woodcut throwback style, but it's married with a graphic novel, steampunk kind of Barbarella sci-fi, which I really dig.
Oh, that's just drawing me right in. And what's so neat is because the first book has such a blend of so many genres, it
Right.
now I could see why it was hard to come up with where do we go from here? Like, where am I taking the story? Because you could have gone in a million different directions with the way it ended. Yeah.
Oh,
And
cool.
so
Yeah.
it's very exciting that we get to find out this year. Am I remembering correctly? November
November,
is
yes.
is the release of book two. And would you like to tell us the title? Would you like to talk about any blurb about the book?
Yeah, it's there's a blurb out on Amazon now, and I think on Athon's site. It's the second book is called The Tinderbox Underground Movement. And in keeping with my love of puns and wordplay, it is what it says it is. There are revolutionary aspects, there are seismic aspects, and every metaphor that you can think of under the sun, or the two suns, when it comes to that. And simple speaking, it's fun because it's like there's a time jump. We jump
It's
20
20
years.
years, yeah.
Yeah, we jump 20 years, and our star-crossed lovers.
Ah,
I start off with some, without too much of a spoiler. It's like, what happens if Romeo and Juliet had survived, and turned into middle-aged parents. So that's the world that we're in. And yes, with the sort of seismic activity, with 20 years of peace and prosperity, and all of a sudden, uh,
Have we forgotten?
have we forgotten? Have we lost our way? I
ah,
can say that the first book was certainly influenced by politics in the world right now, and the second book has a touch of that too. It's like, did we get complacent? Could some unseen threat come and upend everything that we've built? And so, whereas the first book was a fairy tale, the second book is a little bit of a mystery and a thriller, and a political thriller at that.
Yeah, yeah.
This is the cover.
No, without the title, because they're still doing this, but this
yes.
is, if you can
Oh, and I've
see.
seen the pre-order on Amazon. It
Okay.
is gorgeous. Gorgeous.
This
Oh, I
character,
love.
wait till you meet this character.
She's fun.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah,
can't
and
wait.
it's funny because when you look at the cover, it's like I said, I give Yvonne suggestions. She's going to draw what she's going to draw, and I always tell her to do that. Draw what inspires you. Draw what makes you happy. Please don't feel like I'm forcing you to draw creatures and spaceships.
I'm going a bit more fantasy because that's the world I'm comfortable in, without
Mhm.
obviously changing the book.
Yeah,
The tree is different now from the first book. Do
yeah.
you want to see
Yes,
it?
please.
This is my new tree,
Oh,
but it's still
oh,
Look
there.
at that.
oh,
So it's
that is
still there.
amazing.
Isn't it crazy?
So yeah, it's still there,
Yeah.
but it needs to obviously polished up for the book.
And yeah, the style is a little different too, and I love it. She said, "Do I have to do what I did in the first one?" I said, "No, do what you want to do.
Yeah.
Do what makes you happy." And I mean, for instance, like the cover, literally, she'll ask me, "What do you think? What do you think I should do?" And we both love this new character, Hester, so much, and she's young. When we first meet her, she's 11. When the story really gets moving, she's 13. So a little bit of
Well, Hester here.
little Hester, and
Okay.
it's we both wanted her to be a little reminiscent of that sort of iconic Les Miserables, the Les Mis musical poster, that
Yeah.
to evoke that there's a sense of revolution that's going to be happening. So once again, Yvonne just nailed it. I think it brought tears to my eyes the first time I saw it. It's crazy good.
Yes.
And Allegra and Everson.
Older now.
Oh, that is gorgeous. Oh my goodness. Oh, I love that so much.
Oh, yeah, there we
This
go.
is very
They're a
exciting.
little
I
older now.
feel like I'm getting peeked down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, and
This
so I
is
mean, but
very
I
special.
love it because it feels a little bit more fantasy. It feels a little bit more graphic novel now. It feels, uh,
In a weird way, it feels like I have a little bit more control of it. If that, and I don't mean it in. It kind of took me by surprise
the
isn't the right
throat.
word. It was like, yeah, the throat, where it was like I had to just, and now it's like I go back to the step out of your comfort zone, but still be in. No, don't try to force to do something I don't know. Do what I know, but no, yeah. So I'm taking it to the way I think it should be.
Yeah. And I think what's fun
The
is that
left
yes, a lot of the characters that people loved in the first book are most certainly back. Tobias being one of them.
That was
The
my
large
question.
leftist who basically becomes Everson's right hand man in the first novel, and is instrumental in his salvation. But and okay, so spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't read the first book. Sorry, but in the second book, we get to introduce some new characters who I think are interesting and extend that sense of the world and of the kingdom. And this is a female leftist. This is
They're
Phyllis.
back.
Yeah, the leftists are back.
Oh, the eyes. That was one thing that struck me in the first book. The illustration of the leftist
Yeah,
was the eye. That's just very evocative
There
and
was such a
very
struggle in the first
interesting.
because
yeah,
he described the leftists
Mhm.
so accurately for me to now draw them in that crosshatch woodwork style. It was really challenging at the time, and so I think I took it to probably more how
yeah.
I feel they should be now.
Yeah, no, which is great. I mean, I thought Tobias was wonderful in the first book, to be quite honest. But the leftists as a whole, play a slightly larger role in the plot of the second book. Those who have read the first book know that they're called leftists because they were left behind when the two planets split in the Great
Right.
Schism. And so they were left for hundreds of years to evolve into these larger, denser, bigger, humanoids with, the very large pupils because they were subterranean. And so that is my stab at science fiction,
Uh-huh.
and the fact that a planet could actually split in two and yet still be habitable, after generations. But that's the basis of our story, and this investigates that a touch more. And there's also, I will say, I mean, the Aurora constellation was a big deal in the first one. So that sense of the metaphysical, that sense of prophecy and the supernatural
It's still there.
is very much still there, and in some ways even more so.
Okay, good, good. This is definitely whetting the appetite in terms of
Yeah,
getting excited for when the book released. And I think you're telling enough without spoilers. This is awesome. So as you are preparing for this launch coming in November, what types of creative things, like Yvonne, are you still in the midst of illustrations? Have you illustrated everything that's
I'm
done
not quite
already?
finished. No. Yeah,
Not quite.
yeah,
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
still finishing and polishing, and there's still a few more to complete, but it's getting
And there
exciting.
were 30 illustrations in book one, is that right?
There
yeah,
were 30.
yeah.
I think we're doing one per chapter this time because
Okay.
they're more elaborate, and
Mm.
There's more chapters, though, honey.
there's more chapters. So there's more than 30 chapters. No, there's not.
Yeah, there is.
Okay, so there's still okay. Oh, okay, yeah, right.
Some chapters may not have an illustration.
Okay, so yeah, but yeah, yeah. They're I don't know yet.
Yeah,
Mhm, mhm. Well, it's all part of the process. It's all part of the creative process, I think. We have had such a wonderful time getting the opportunity to chat with you both. Before we wrap up, can we talk about what are you working on in the TV realm, in the movie realm, Lou? Is there anything current, anything coming up?
yes, a few things. I believe the release just got moved to Halloween, which would be very appropriate. I'm in a film with Frank Grillo and Katrina Law called Werewolves. Guess what it's about?
Ah,
Yeah, and that
yes.
comes out at Halloween. And then I have a couple of really lovely independent films that I have finished that very likely will be doing the festival circuit. One of them, Et Tu, where I play a theater director with Malcolm McDowell, who I adore. That one has
Wow.
already won a couple of film festivals, so be looking for that one. It won the Phoenix Film Festival and the Heartland Festival for Best Horror and Best Screenplay. Wonderful young director there. And also one I just finished called Keep Quiet, the Vincent Gresha, who is a Independent Spirit nominee and Sundance guy. That one has come out really, really well, and that's kind of a really gritty drama set on the reservation. Uh, and I'm still waiting to see one that I did with my old friend Tom Muska, who produced and wrote Stand and Deliver. We did a little film noir down in Puerto Rico last summer, so looking forward to that. In the writing world, and I have to say this, I have to point this out because it'll be yet another collaboration.
And
I
full circle.
And full circle, I am going back and I'm rewriting the novel I wrote in college because I always thought it was a good idea. I think it was the second thing of mine you ever read,
Yeah.
and I just in reworking it, I feel like I'm such a better writer now. But the idea was always good. And
Mhm.
what's really wonderful is that I believe it'll afford the opportunity for Yvonne to go crazy because
Uh,
it's yeah, it's very atmospheric. It's very environmental. It's set in nature, and so I'm yeah, I'm really looking to forward to some full color illustrations from her.
oh, so
Yeah.
you two have work to do. So you'll be continuing to work on your other novel, Yvonne. You'll be doing further illustrations, maybe more than you realized for book two.
Yeah,
So
right. No, wait a minute. Wait, that was an eye opener there.
So I am so thrilled to have had the opportunity to see you face to face, going from radio chat last year at Joy on Paper Radio to Joy on Paper Live here on YouTube. Thank you so much, both of you, for your time, for your sharing all these wonderful details that fans will get to get excited with me about this book. And they can go on Amazon right now and pre-order this book, The Tinderbox Underground Movement. Is there anywhere else? You mentioned Twitter. You're active on Twitter, so people can follow you there.
They can see a lot of Yvonne's artwork on Instagram
Yeah, I'm on Instagram.
Yeah.
Yeah.
at YV.
YV
Your
Phil.
handle, Yvonne. Mhm.
Yeah, just a lot of the other stuff that she's doing in addition to the illustrations for the Tinderbox. So
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both so much. And when that book comes out, we will be in touch because I can't wait to read it and then talk to you about it.
and we're
So we'll
excited too
get you
because
back on the show.
now maybe we can go to some book signings and meet some people and do some readings and
Right.
stuff. So that would be very exciting.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. Enjoy the
Thank you.
rest of your afternoon, and we'll talk to you again very soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Wow. Oh, that was a nice interview. I'm so happy. I don't know when you will be watching this, but today is Mother's Day in 2024. And I thought it would be just a wonderful thing for Bria, who is a mother and who has a delightful son named Luke. Um, I thought, well, she will always remember on Mother's Day that she got to interview Lou Diamond Phillips. My goodness, one of America's favorite stars. Of course, you've seen him a million times. I think he's done 100 television programs and, of course, La Bamba. So I just wanted to give that to Bria because she has been so much fun to have on the program, both here on live and also on the radio program because she does every month she does a sci-fi hour, and she's going to interview more sci-fi authors, and that's going to be lots of fun right here on live. And as she said, she did a year ago. She did a book buzz for Lou Diamond Phillips, and then she invited him on the radio program for an interview. And then from there, we moved on here to the live program on the YouTube channel. And that's one of the wonderful things that, we're having so much fun with this. When I started the program 9 years ago on the radio, I had no idea what this would blossom into. But I just wanted to do something to help authors promote their books because, they have these launch dates, and it's always fun to talk to an author on a launch date. But even the most famous authors have a limited window of opportunity to promote their books, and then that's it. And then it's up to them if they keep the book, sort of the ball rolling, or the book floating down the big river. So it is difficult. You have this wonderful book, and in this case, I mean, I tell you, this Tinderbox series is going to be, I think it's going to be so successful. Of course, this first one, Soldier of Indira, is fantastic. Bria talked about the cover. It is available on Barnes and Noble and Amazon, so you can get it right now. And then what you can do is pre-order the next book, Lou Diamond Phillips, Tinderbox Underground Movement. And it is going to be a fun book. I am sure of it. And in this one, well, it's so fantastic, of course, that Lou and Yvonne are working together to really come out with wonderful stories, and Yvonne with the wonderful illustrations. And I think we got a really sneak peek. I think maybe this is, I don't think they've done it on any other show. They have done this wonderful, wonderful reveal for us right here on Joy on Paper Live. And that's why we're having so much fun here on Joy on Paper Live. And I want you to just know that, we want to bring you more interviews with lots more authors. We have so many that we love and we enjoy, and we hope that you will find the stories behind their books fun. As you saw here, Lou and Yvonne, they're just having fun. This is what writing does. This is why I named the program Joy on Paper, because it's such a joy, whether you're writing words or whether you're drawing, and you have this wonderful joy of accomplishing something and sharing something and just having fun with it. Life is, you have so many things you can do in life if you want to. And I don't know, Lou wrote a book when he was young and he put it away and he didn't write for years. Well, you have to admit he was pretty busy. I think he was pretty busy. But it's wonderful that he's had this opportunity, and that when he did finally come out with a book, it is a real winner. So the series, the Tinderbox series, is going to be, I'm sure we'll see it eventually in the movies, because it's very cinematic. It's a wonderful storyline, and you will enjoy it. And this one, look at this cover. I mean, this is one beautiful cover, and it is, ask the question, what if Romeo and Juliet had survived and they lived in the middle age? Well, you never know. And here we will find out what Lou has done with this story. And it's wonderful. So do get it and pre-order it. It's always fun when you pre-order a book for an author. They really appreciate it. Being, somebody who's been talking to authors over the years, 9 years, and I tell you, so many of them, they are just so grateful when they get pre-orders. It really makes a difference. It makes a difference because Amazon then helps promote the book, or Barnes & Noble. So both of you, of them, do that. And if you can, go ahead and pre-order, and you'll have the book on the day it's released, and you can have the fun of discovering what they have done with this wonderful story. It is a great storyline. Okay, well, I want to thank you so much, for watching this one, and I hope you'll watch all the other interviews. If you're an author, you will find inspiration from listening to the interviews that I have both here and on my Patreon page. The Patreon page is where I am going to be putting all of the really almost 2,000 interviews that I've done in 9 years. And I wanted to put them somewhere where you could have access to them. You can have the inspiration that comes from listening to authors talk about their books. And also for readers, if you're a reader, listen to both the interviews here on the YouTube live station, and also go to my Patreon page. It doesn't cost you anything to listen to the radio interviews. There are going to be a few book clubs that I'm going to be, charging some money, but that's because I want to, I will actually have people in the book club come on Joy on Paper Live. So there's a lot of things that will go on with that. But to to listen to the radio interviews, they are free on the Patreon page, and I'm going to be adding more. It's taking me time because there's a lot of them to put up. But all you have to do, if you are on YouTube, you know what you have to do to help. The whole system all comes down to you helping us to keep going, helping us to be able to thrive here on the YouTube channel. And yet, if you could just subscribe, comment, like, and share. And really, the comments are someplace I really would like you to go. I'd like you not just to comment on this interview and, to send perhaps congratulations to Lou and Yvonne for the wonderful work, and tell them if you pre-ordered. It's really great. But also to tell me, let me know what authors you like, because I want to, I'm always out there trying to discover new authors. There are a lot of authors, although I've read a lot of books. Um, a lot of the books that I've read, of course, those authors are long gone because I've been reading for so many years, and I have thousands and thousands of books of, the 17th, 18th, 19th century. But I'm telling you, I'm always trying to find somebody who's active and out there selling books or promoting their books and want to come here on Joy on Paper Live. Just send me their names and in the comment box, and if I select an author that you've recommended and you're the first one to recommend that author, we will invite you to be here to join us right here on Joy on Paper Live, so you can have some time to talk to your favorite author. So just put a name in the comment box and we'll get back to you. And that's about it. And then I have one more message. If you go and look at the interviews that I've had recently, I had an interview with Barbara Hinsky. Now, Barbara Hinsky is an amazing author. She wrote a series of books, she's continuing to write. She just was on the program to promote book 5 of her Guiding Emily series, which is called From the Heart. And everything Barbara has done in writing the Guiding Emily book series is from the heart. And it is so beautiful that her first book, which is called Guiding Emily, and is about a young woman who loses her sight, Emily, it's devastating. It's devastating. But she comes back to, hope and to life when she gets a guide dog. And his name is Garth. And if you must go to Hallmark Channel and watch this wonderful, wonderful film that they made of Guiding Emily. The acting is terrific. And of course, you've got Garth, and Garth talks, and you will love it. It's a wonderful, wonderful book and a wonderful television show. And we're hoping and we're crossing our fingers, and we're also writing to Hallmark. You can send an email to them. Once you see that movie, you will want more, and asking Hallmark, please turn it into a series, because we want to see more of Emily and we want to hear more from Garth. So you can do that. And one of the beautiful things about Barbara Hinsky is that she donates half of the profits from Guiding Emily, the book series, to blind organizations. She is also very active in promoting all types of events for raising funds for the blind. So when I was talking to her after the interview I had with her, I decided to do my own little PSA, and I've also contacted Lighthouse for the Blind and some other organizations to run their PSAs. So here's my PSA, and I hope you'll like it. And then just think about donating to a blind organization near you. We all need to know more about how to help the blind and what we can do. Guide dogs are so expensive. They cost about $50,000, and it's a lot of time and energy is put into raising a guide dog. And you will see that, which is done beautifully in the Hallmark movie. So please watch this PSA. It's just a few minutes, and I hope it inspires you, like Barbara Hinsky, to donate to the blind.